Nefrit, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Phil?
You know, I'm okay for a Tuesday. So you are a musician. Tell me what got you started in music.
Yeah, I'm a creative. I do music. I write.
Mhm.
So I'm a writer, musician, and it's just something that I was was born with. I always wrote
Nice.
music. I created. It's really where I find my grounding. Life can
Mhm.
be tough for me in all sorts of ways, but creation is where I find my. That's where the easy part for me here. It's when I kind of disappear from
Mhm.
the world and disappear into my creation, like a different realm almost. So yeah, I always wrote music. I always played instruments. It's been a way for me to process and express and explore. It's been always a part of me. Yeah. So I in
Mhm.
my 20s I had a band, toured. I have a lot of music that I recorded and released on all kinds of
Mhm.
the major streaming platforms. And I also write and I blog and I have a forthcoming memoir. Yeah. So this is my part of my creative
Nice.
endeavors.
I noticed that when people have creative outlet in life, whether it's music or writing or podcasting, I think people that are a little bit more creative in life can be a little bit more well rounded because using the creative portion of the brain really opens you up to different perspectives. You know what I mean? It's not you're not just a linear person. You can think in laterally and multi-directional.
Yeah.
So what type of music do you do? If you want to pigeonhole it and put it in a genre, what type is it?
Um, I always kind of struggled to pinpoint exactly my genre. It also it changed
Hmm.
throughout my life. When I experimented with different styles. My main medium is it's guitar and piano, and in the younger days I could do some folk, and then it was alternative and pop, and I don't even know what to define it as.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think going back to what you just said, I really, part of my journey in life, I've always been very spiritual, not religious, but very spiritual, connected to what
Hmm.
I call now love. And I find that
Yeah.
the through creativity, it's really where we find our natural connection to that force of
Hmm.
love, that creative force,
Right.
that we all come from. So that's, I think, it's very therapeutic for anybody. It's really connects you to that, who you really are, and to the divine force of creation. That's how I see it, and that's why it feels so good. It's kind of,
Hmm.
yeah. So I have a whole theory about it, but
Well, please share if you want to.
yeah. Well, I kind of see us here in this passage of, like, in the physical form. I know
Mhm.
that from the journey that I went through, my healing journey, that we're about to talk
Mhm.
about, um,
Mhm.
that we're here as, we have two identities. We have the human identity, that we're in a physical suit, organic suit, but we also have our
Mhm.
eternal identity, which is our soul, our spirit, whatever people want to call it. That
Right.
is, it's eternal, and that's what comes out of source, love, and it's made out of love. They're all made out of love. Um,
Mhm.
so many people, we can apprehend life through both of these lenses, our spirit, our soul lens, and through the
Mhm.
physical, the brain, the hardwire. And then when we're very, very um, focused on solely the what I call the hardwire, the software, we're really, occupied with we see life mainly through fear and doubt and anger. But The point
Mhm.
is to be able to zoom out and kind of experience life through both lenses, through the soul lens, the
Yeah.
original, the love lens, and the senses and the physical. So I think that the creative part is what really connects you to your soul, to your, what is connected to
Yeah.
love, to the divine. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, not to get all quotey on anything, but I think it was Confucius that said music is something the human soul cannot live without, right? But you can take it a step further and say maybe creativity is the same thing.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, but I can talk, right? That's why I do this.
exactly.
So it's like, trust me, some people get tired of me talking.
No, that's your thing.
I have a very curious mind. I really enjoy, like I've said 1,000 times on the show, I've never met a stranger. So, um, I'll talk to anybody. So that's my form of outlet because I like to learn about people like you and the people that come on the show. It's just like we're all bouncing around, bumping into each other. So you might as well have a conversation. You know what I mean? Whether it's just a brief, cup of coffee or whatever. It's a beautiful thing to have to sit down and just talk to a complete stranger for a
Exactly.
minute because you know we because we can all have tunnel vision in our lives, right? And it's like we don't ever hear any other perspectives. We don't ever hear any other thoughts. And to not to go through life and not try to understand people's journeys or plights or whatever you want to call it, I think it's a sad existence if you're only concerned about yourself. But then again, some people have been through a lot and they want to protect their heart, and there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Sure.
You know, so I can kind of understand both sides of the
Absolutely.
coin. You told me that you suffer from an eating disorder.
Yep. Yep. What I do these days, I'm an advocate for eating
Hmm.
disorder recovery, late identified autism.
Okay.
That was also part of my journey. So I
Yeah.
I did go through a very very difficult journey with my eating disorder,
Hmm.
but I know, like you said, this is your thing to talk, and that is creativity.
Hmm.
Um, I
Yeah.
know that the reason why I went through this journey is so that I can help others. And the reason why I share it, and pretty much an open book about it these days. It wasn't like that before.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but the reason why I share it is because there's so many other people struggling with this. And, parents, just individuals struggling with it, husbands, wives, whatever. And it's something that needs to be brought up into the light and talk about because, we all struggle with something. And, some people are not ready to talk about their struggles, and that's completely okay. But what I found is that when you talk about this is part of healing. Eating
Hmm.
disorders, they thrive in secrecy, thrive in silence.
Yeah.
And when you bring it out into the
Hmm.
light, not only you help yourself, you help other people. And even if they don't struggle with an eating disorder, um, it kind of gives, I found that when I was sharing my story, people would approach me and kind of share their own story that just didn't have anything to do with that. Maybe it was depression, maybe it was bipolar disorder, whatever that is, because we all have something that we
Hmm.
deal with. So when you share your struggles, it's a human thing. It kind of is
Yeah.
an okay. You know what it does? It
Mm.
it gives the people the okay to let go of shame, and that's the most
Mhm.
destructive sentiment.
Yeah, and then that's exactly what I was gonna say. The reason why people, like you said, it kinda hides in the shadows a little bit is because people are afraid of being judged. They're afraid of having shame. Like, I had a guy recently on the show, his name was, Josh Shea,
Mhm.
and he's a porn recovery coach
Mm,
for people men and women that are addicted to that stuff.
yeah,
And, I mean, and it's the shame and the hurt and, and all that other stuff. It just I think that we live in such a judgmental society that people are afraid to say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this," because and it really stops people from getting help,
exactly.
because it's like when you go to a therapist, you're talking to a complete stranger just like we're doing right here, and and you're trusting this person not to judge you, but to understand.
Yeah,
And sometimes that's all people really want. I have anger issues out the wazoo. You know what I mean? Like, if it's not because I'm selfish, it's because, and there's probably a little bit of ego in there too, right? Like,
sure.
I think I know best, and most times I realize that I'm wrong a
Mhm.
lot, and that's the part that gets you angry because, like, God dang it, I'm wrong again. But it's all in how you deal with it. I may have been on this planet for almost 50 years, but I'm still trying to figure out how to be human. It's not there's no handbook here, and it's like,
Exactly.
and you look at all the things that people go through, whether it's, a divorce or domestic violence or eating disorder or whatever. We all have something we have to overcome, and I think that if we're able to sit down and talk about the differences, we'll find the common ground. And then it's also a level of mutual respect too. Like, I respect you as a human being, you
Sure.
know, and I understand that you have to look at it as you're a person that has multiple layers. You're not just, Nefrit the musician. You know what I mean? When did you figure out that you had an issue with the eating disorder? Let me just ask the hard question. Is it anorexia or bulimia?
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Anorexia nervosa. There are different types of eating
Mm,
disorders. Mine, what I'm struggling with personally is anorexia nervosa.
mhm. Okay.
I, that's part of the reason why I talk about it because there are a lot of misconceptions about what anorexia looks like. I didn't know. I lived with it my entire life. It's a
Right.
progressive disease. I don't really like to call it disease. It's a struggle. It's a challenge. Um, and I had no idea that what I was doing my entire life, using this as a coping mechanism, was an eating disorder, until it blew in my face. And it started when I was 15. Um, I It followed a trauma, and it
Mm,
progressed. And my entire life, I would go back to it again as a coping mechanism. And my entire life, really. And at the age of 40, I there was another thing that I didn't know that I was struggling with. I was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, and
mhm.
which explained all my struggles my entire life. I felt broken. I felt like I'm not good enough. I struggled with, um, understanding people. I know that a lot of people struggle with understanding people, but being on the spectrum takes it to the 10th degree. I felt
Of
like
course. Yeah.
everything that I did was, I saw other people do things so easy in so many ways, and to me everything required so much effort. I was stuck in my head. um, I struggle with a lot of different challenges. And then but really, that kind of sensory challenges, and the age of 40, I was just completely burnt out on life. I was
Yeah.
consumed with self-hate, and these are things that I now understand. I didn't know it back then. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at the age of 40, and at that point,
Wow.
I was just burnt out. I was ready to go out. I just didn't want to be here anymore. And I was very afraid with the diagnosis. The doctors instilled a lot of fear in me, and it shut down my
Yeah.
appetite. And that the eating disorder kind of jumped on that. And I sought natural healing modalities from Crohn's. Very
Yeah.
quickly, actually, on paper, I got myself into natural remission within 3 months. I mean, the external
Wow.
pain really persisted for a long, long time. That's a different story. But I kept on losing
Yeah.
weight. And, for all intents and purposes, I should have I started losing weight with the diagnosis. I should have gained my weight back, but kept on losing weight.
Mm,
It coincided with a pandemic, so nobody really saw me at that
mm,
point, but my husband, my parents, my kids. My kids were young. And I kept on losing weight, and I kept on losing weight, and it was on purpose. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew, that this was, I knew it and I didn't know it, that it was, It was
Right.
an eating disorder. And that's kind of, prompting me to do that. Um, there's always a side like, no, no, there's no way. This is not an eating disorder. I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know to call it anything. But for 3 years, it persisted. And at the end of those 3 years, after unremitting starvation, I did not stop for a day. It got to the point that what I ate, you could just, you know, put it on one hand. I knew
Yeah.
that I was dying. I knew that, and everybody thought that I was
Right.
dying from Crohn's. Nobody knew the
Mm,
truth, the
right.
veracity behind what was really
Yeah.
happening. And that's when
Mhm.
eating disorders become extremely dangerous. When you don't talk about it, when the silence around it. I didn't talk about it. I didn't say anything to what was that I was doing that on purpose. But I woke up one day and I knew I could die the next day. Um,
Right.
and medical tests really showed I had bradycardia at that point, which is extremely low heart rate. It was in the 40s. I had osteopenia. I
No.
was losing bone
Mm,
mass, very close to osteoporosis, which is irreversible. I
mhm.
didn't have my period
Yeah.
for a year. My organs were shutting down. I was down to 96
Wow.
pounds, 5'7". So it was extremely dangerous. The main concern is a cardiac arrest. My heart could stop anymore.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I knew it in every fiber of my being that if I didn't say something, my kids could be left without a mother. Um, I was seeing a
Yeah.
therapist on Zoom, and one day I took a picture of myself and I said, "Hey, can I send you a picture?" She never saw me in person, and that was the day that I kind of ousted the anorexia. I knew that I knew I needed help, but to get to that point, say
Mhm.
it, I need help. I think that that's
Yeah.
something. It took a long time, and
It goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fear. You fear judgment, or you fear not having, the support, or it could be you fear of burdening somebody, or there's just so much, and I think that, doing what you did and saying, "Hey, I need help," that's the biggest step you could take,
absolutely.
And this, I don't know why we have this thought in our society, and it's multicultural too. We have this mentality of you need to suck it up.
Mhm.
And there's some things like, okay, yeah, someone takes your parking spot, suck it up. You know what I mean? But if you're going through something that can kill you, get fucking help.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's easier said than done because, like I said earlier, I have a lot of issues that I don't address. It's a lot of self doubt. It's a lot of I'm not good enough bullshit, and I know that I am because I have a loving girlfriend. I got a mother that I care for dearly.
Mm,
My friends group is incredibly small because I prefer quality over quantity.
sure. Right.
They say you are the people you hang out with,
Mhm.
right? And I have no desire to have someone who's going to, you know, take away from my life instead of add to it. And then the other side of that is also adding to theirs. But that's a whole different thing. So with the Crohn's, that probably affected the way you wanted to eat as well, because that's not a fun thing to go through. It's a very like me being in the medical field. I do help the gastroenterologists do those. I've seen Crohn's with my own
Sure.
eyes, and it is ugly. How did that affect your appetite? I'm sure it didn't help.
Yeah, so I had it 100% went hand in hand. This was also something I never
Mhm,
really knew that I had. It was also a progressive, looking back, it really started in my 20s. Um,
mhm,
and my Crohn's really manifested there. I had a lot of perianal pain. I couldn't sit at that point.
mhm,
I couldn't
mhm.
even lie down on my back flat. I had to be on my side. It took me I couldn't walk.
Wow.
At that point I had so much pain.
Right.
um it wasn't like, after the diagnosis of the Crohn's, a colonoscopy, the nurse was like,
Mm,
I never had pain in my stomach. It wasn't the way it presents itself in the usual way. And she's like, "Don't you have pain?" I was like, "No, not in my stomach." So it mainly,
Yeah.
I did. I have severe Crohn's diagnosis, so it wasn't mild; it was very severe. Um, but the
Mhm.
pain really, like I said, I on paper after 3 months, I did a
Mhm.
whole life change, and that's an entire story because I had 6 gastroenterologists tell me, "You have to take immune suppressing drugs. Your bowels will be removed if not."
Yeah.
I was very scared of that, especially
Yeah.
with coinciding with the pandemic, and I vowed to do it naturally. And I changed. I learned
Mhm.
about medicinal weeds. I did a whole just life change, and my
Mhm.
inflammation levels went down to normal, but the pain, the external pain, persisted, and it took me a year to start
Mm.
walking. So with the pain,
Right.
with the fear, that 100% contributed. It was like a fertile ground for my eating disorder, because my eating
Yeah.
disorder was just, having a field day. Oh, great! You're losing your appetite. Let's go. Um,
Right.
and it really, that's what set the stage for this hailstorm that was about to come. The loss of
Yeah.
appetite, the pain. I was afraid of eating.
Mhm.
So that was, and many times, the like eating disorders, I don't know if, it's not a blanket statement, but a lot of times they kind of come hand in hand with a lot of other things that promote them.
Yeah.
So for me, it was definitely Crohn's. Um, and a whole slew of other things that, an eating disorder is never about
Mhm.
one thing. We're all, like you said before in our little
Right.
chat, we're composed of many different things, and we're not just,
Mhm.
it doesn't live in vacuum. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it was a very, and it's still to this day, um, a challenging situation, because whenever my Crohn's flares and I find myself having to change the way that I eat or eat less, it immediately triggers my eating disorder tendencies, which, and kind of all the
Mhm.
lines blur into one thing, which is which. Where does this Crohn ends and anorexia begins, and they all feed off each other, no pun
Mhm.
intended. Um, yeah, it's very um very difficult situation. But if there's one thing I want to tell you, that I found that is at the
Mhm.
core, and it kind of, I think, um, weaves into all the things that we've been talking about, mental health in general. And
Mhm.
at the core of every mental health challenge, and we talked about being afraid of, being judged, and society, kind of
Mhm.
prizes the, "Oh, I'm fine, everything's good," and not reaching out, not sharing. It's being looked upon as weakness, when you're dealing with something. But I think that at the core
Yeah.
of all of it is really self-hate, and that's what I learned. And the
Mhm.
antidote to that is self-love. So if there's one thing
Yeah.
that I think is at the core of, where there's all these different pieces to the puzzle, but I think our going back to our conversation, being kind of manifesting into this physical, our journey here is to just learn and go through things and expand. And
Mm.
the challenges, the mental health challenges, the physical challenges we go through, is just an opportunity for growth, an opportunity. We all go through it.
Yeah.
And it's just, a
Mhm.
way to how to learn from it, how to expand from that.
Mm.
And at the core of it
Yeah.
is really a lesson of love. And at the core of a lesson
Mhm.
of love is self-love. So we all hear
Yeah.
very, very, um, very coercive messages growing up from society,
Mhm.
parents, and, spiritual leaders, religious leaders, doctors, whatever.
Mhm.
intentional or unintentional, because everybody else hears the same messages. And we learn to
Yeah.
internalize these messages. We learn to kind of make these our own voice. And when we start talking to ourselves with
Mm.
this voice, I'm not good enough, I'm broken, I'm bad,
Mhm.
I'm too
Yeah.
much, not enough, then um, we develop, and we talked about it before, we develop shame, and shame develops into self hate
Mhm.
eventually. And I think
Mhm.
most of mental health, if there's one thing that everybody wants, it's not money, it's not anything other than love, to be loved unconditionally. And
Yeah.
we're all here different. We're all here supposed to be meant to be different than one another. And if we learn to love ourselves unconditionally, I think most of mental health challenges, if not completely dissolve, I don't think, maybe it's not completely, because there's always other things we also deal with, but it would definitely
Yeah.
kind of attenuate and soften the challenges um, that we go through. And I can tell you for sure, the whole thing for me was really self hate. I think the core
Mhm.
of it.
I think it's because we're so flawed that we don't think that we're worthy of love.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriend now, we got into a dumbass argument this morning over something stupid,
Mm,
and I said some stupid shit
mm,
that I never should have said. And of course I immediately apologized because I am an adult sometimes. But it's easier to say the thing and not and then be angry. But I know that she loves me. I love her. There's no question about that. It's just in the moment, sometimes you just say the thing that comes to your head and you shouldn't. Like in your case with your health issues, having a good support system and people that love you, like your husband and your children, you know, probably put you head and shoulders above people that don't. You know what I mean? And
sure.
in your healing journey. And then so that's why it's okay to, you got to check in on your people,
But,
the people that you care about, people you love.
but it
Yeah.
wasn't. It was
Good.
actually, and yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's not about not feeling the feelings and not expressing your emotions. Emotions are very. We're all here to
Mhm.
feel and express all the rainbow of emotions we have, anger included.
Yeah.
But it's part of
Mhm.
to let that pass through us, and then and how do we proceed, and proceed with a sober, intentional life. It's not about stifling your
Mhm.
emotions, it's not about stifling who you are.
Right.
Anger is very
Mhm.
important, but then if you learn how to feel it, let it go through you, and then proceed intentionally, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But to
Mhm.
what you just said, and what I learned is, my husband and I, we had a lot of difficulties before I was diagnosed with autism, with all
Mhm.
the stuff. It's like all these diagnoses, they kind of fell on me all of a sudden. Like I went from just not
Yeah.
understanding my life at all to all of a sudden having like five diagnoses, and it came between us. And when you don't understand what's happening to somebody, it actually brought a lot of difficulties and challenges between us. And then it's part of why I was
Mhm.
like, I'm done. I was just so burnt out. But the diagnosis, the understanding, that
Mhm.
enabled him and I to start seeing each other from a different lens and understanding why these difficulties even were there to begin with. And there's a lot of times that I felt very much alone in my journey. Um, I I also, being on the spectrum, I have a hard time understanding people. I kind of am very confused. People would say one thing and do another thing, and do something else.
Mhm.
I don't know always how to read facial expressions. I always left with echoes. Like after every social interaction, um I analyze it for, it could be days. It kind of,
Mhm.
like, did I say the wrong thing? Did I do the wrong thing? Where were my hands? Where did, why did their mouth do this thing? And I I always felt very alone, but I understood that and 100% community and support is so vital to our, you know,
Mhm.
health. But before you can, it's what I understood, that before you can rely on anybody else and before you can give love to anybody else, the greatest lesson is to be there for yourself. You are your best
Mhm.
friend. You are your best critic and the, the remedy at the same time.
Yeah. You you definitely have to have, those connections, and I was just at the thought that you were talking about is, like, everything you were going for pre-diagnosis. I'm sure your husband at some point probably felt that some of the problems were him because men being fixers like we are, like, when my girlfriend's going through something, I wanna fix it immediately because I don't want her to ever have a moment of pain
Sure.
or whatever, you know? And so the goal is for us as men is to fix it. And he probably was frustrated with himself at some point because he couldn't fix it because he didn't know. You know what I mean? So that adds stress, that adds other things to it. And like you said, you have to learn how to love yourself and to be able to step forward and say, "Hey, I need help." And then finding out the problem. And I think another thing that we do in this country as well, or in people in general, not even in, not even the country, but the things that people do is like we tend to ignore things because of the bad news. I think it's the fear of knowing is worse than the fear of not knowing for some people. So that's why they don't get the help they need. If you don't ask for help, you can't alleviate the problem. It's just part of the human condition, unfortunately,
Sure.
is all this stuff. And I'm, and to go through what you've gone through and to come out, a good person is not always easy because you could blame everybody. You could blame the world. You could, but it's just a thing that happens, unfortunately. And I don't mean to be blasé about it because it's a very um, life altering thing.
Sure.
What's your relationship with food now? What's it like?
Um, and by the way, and just going back a minute, I think a lot of times what I
Yeah.
saw, certainly, when I started my journey with healing, and I met a lot of people on their healing journey, and in order to heal myself, I read a lot of accounts of self healing, and also I did everything I could to help
Hmm.
myself. Many people um, get to the point of they go through something like life altering experiences to get to the
Right.
understanding that really it's all about helping. It's all about helping others. It's all about love. It's all about, and many of us sort of, and I tell my kids always, you don't have to get to the point of almost dying to realize
Hmm.
how life amazing is, um how it's all about self-love and helping others, and and being light here. So
Hmm.
um yeah, so I think trauma, and not everybody, but many people who go through very severe trauma end up realizing that this is what it's all about here. um
Yeah.
but relationship with food, yeah, it's you know having an eating disorder is not something that you, certainly not the length of time that I had it. Started when I was
Hmm.
15, and I had it for over 30 years. It's not something that just goes away and becomes part of
Right.
your wiring. Um, so that's another thing I learned to understand. It's not, I can't just ignore it. It's not, it's going to come back, and it does. Um, especially when I fall or there's hardships in my life, I start stalking again in the back of
Hmm.
my mind. And because it's always been my go-to coping mechanism, and mechanism of control, loss of control,
Hmm.
self-punishment. There's all sorts of things that go into it. And
Hmm.
I actually, as far as food, I was very restricted in my healing, the onset of my healing. I this is weird, but it's what helped me heal is when for my Crohn's, I cleaned everything up. I which fed into my eating disorder. I ate very little, but
Hmm.
it healed my gut but then slowly, 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 and I went to treatment for 10 months. I left home and I went to treatment for 10 months away from home in
Mhm,
the highest levels of care for eating disorders. And I came back home this June. It's going to be 3 years. And during that course, I also found I let go of all food rules and I found so much freedom. And I started eating whatever it is that I
mhm,
wanted. As far as Crohn's, I slowly made my way into food freedom. And in as far as eating disorders go, and
mhm,
I've never experienced so much freedom in my life. Now, once in a while, I do have a flare of, my Crohn's. I'm
mhm.
actually going through one right
Yeah,
now. And then I have to kind of go back to the drawing board, and I have to be very careful to not
mhm,
ignite the eating disorder, which the minute I start curtailing my food intake because of Crohn's or changing, I can't have this and I can't have that, it's the anorexia
mhm.
starts like, oh, let's go, let's keep going, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's an internal battle. Treatment, there's no more like secrets, there's no more triggering things. The more you
Okay.
talk about it,
Yeah,
actually helps you.
helps.
It's the opposite of being in silence about it. And I like for people to
Mhm.
understand, what does it mean, what does it look like, and
Well, it's almost like a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing with the food, because you can't eat because of the Crohn's, and then you got the anorexia tapping you in the back of the head. It takes a lot of mental fortitude. You know
yes.
what I mean?
And you know what, the
And yeah.
third thing that
Mhm,
goes into this is autism.
mhm,
And so from what I learned, from this journey, from personal experience, meeting people in treatment, and I recently talked to another clinician,
mhm,
the rates of women who grapple with anorexia nervosa, um, who are on the autism spectrum, are very, very high.
mm,
It's, it depends on the research. It's anywhere between 20 to 35% if you research that.
wow.
It's a very, very
Mhm,
high percentage. In my experience, I think almost 50% of people, and it's been corroborated with a lot of different clinicians that I worked with so far. I've worked with many clinicians at this point. Um, Almost, to me, 50% of people with eating disorders are neurodivergent, but specifically women. Now, the problem with autism, the correlation between autism and anorexia, it's almost like a lethal connection, because part of the wiring of autism is the propensity to want to follow rules, routines. And I mean,
mhm,
while every individual is different, there is kind of a thread that goes, you know, for a lot of people goes through this. So when your brain's wired to follow rules and routines, anorexia thrives on that.
mm,
And once you have
right.
a rule, because eating disorders, they're the nature of it is, following rules. And
Yeah.
when you have the propensity to follow rules, that feeds into an anorexia. And that becomes a really, really hard um, duo, because even at the point when I wanted to stop, I wanted to eat, I wanted freedom, I wanted to stop what I was doing at the end of those 3 years. I was weighing myself
Mhm,
several times a day. I was weighing myself several times at night. I would wake up in the middle of the night, strip down, get on the scale. Um, and that became almost like my special interest, my obsession, my this is what I do. Um,
mhm,
so even when I
yeah,
wanted to stop and I felt so, it was torture. It was just absolute torture. I couldn't stop because those were the rules. I couldn't stop the
mhm,
rules. Um,
right.
so that correlation between those two things really creates. So not only the Crohn's, it's three things. It's the Crohn's, the autism, and the anorexia that I have to really constantly deal with.
Yeah, so it sounds like the anorexia makes you sick, the Crohn's makes you sick, and then the autism makes you obsess about both,
It's
right?
this like,
So
yeah,
it's almost
couple
it's a
here.
never ending cycle, you know? Yeah. So when you talked about stepping on the scale, so were you just obsessed with having a low weight, or were you obsessed with what I mean, because obviously the autism would feed into that,
Mhm.
right? So was it a number on the scale? You know, did you ever think that there was a point where you would be satisfied with the weight?
Many times, you have something that you like, people call it spin or special interest, whatever, that you kind of you focus your attention on, derive pleasure. You have the also propensity to kind of hyper focus on things with this type of
Mhm,
wiring. So it can be different things, but when you start hyper focusing on weight and weight loss, that becomes almost like
mhm,
this. You zoom in with this, laser beam, um, focus
focus.
and
Mhm,
hyper fixation on this. So, I mean,
mhm,
anorexia wears many hats. Many times it's not about food at all. Actually, it's about
mhm, yeah,
control. For me, it was, I felt too much for the world. I felt like I needed control when I couldn't
mm,
control the environment, when I couldn't understand the world. Things changed all the time for people on the spectrum. Change is very difficult. And when things are kind of willy-nilly around you all the time, makes you feel like you're constantly like falling out of an airplane without a parachute. So that was a way of
right,
control for me, but it was also a way of feeling physically. It's not so much about the looks, it's about feeling less because I felt like I was just too much, too intense, too much for the world. It helps kind of palliated that feeling of being too much when I was less in my body. And
mhm,
when I started losing weight, the feeling of it is what I relished. I relished it. Kind of it gives you a sense of, man, I'm succeeding in this. I feel like I'm failing in everything else in
mhm,
life. I'm broken, I'm a failure of a human being. Boy, I'm good at that. I'm able to control
oh, yeah,
hunger.
yeah,
I'm able
mhm,
to lose weight and lose weight and lose weight. And it was, yeah, and with the hyperfixation and propensity to hyperfixate on things, that was something that was all of a sudden became the thing that I lived for, I breathed for. There was nothing else. There was just losing weight. There was
mm,
just becoming less and less.
yeah,
There's more control, and it makes you feel like you're on top of the world. Um, that's the
mm,
other part of it. It's like it's almost like an addiction. And so when I gotten to the point when I was 96 pounds, I that's when I was like, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I
mhm,
knew that it would never end. It would end in death. So
yeah,
that was, and there was so many steps to my journey. In eating disorders, it's it was a when I started working with clinicians. Finally, when I ousted anorexia, and we knew, both my husband and I, that we needed to recruit help. We can't do it on our own.
mhm,
Everybody was saying,
right,
okay, yeah, you need to, telling Ron, my husband, you need to get rid of the scale. And
yeah,
he said, I can't force her. I can't do it. She needs to do it on her own. And I wasn't able to do that. I had to know the numbers,
mm,
had to know.
yeah,
But there was a point when I started walking the journey towards recovery very early on. And it took a while that I decided that that's it. I have to get rid of it. We did this big event. We call it the Smash Party. And I took a
mhm,
sledgehammer. Um, And with my kids are young, I shattered the scale and I never looked at the numbers ever again. I was blind weight,
yeah,
but I still to
mhm,
this day, I don't want to know my numbers. I don't want to know my weight.
mhm,
That's the one thing. If I go to, doctors, new doctors that I don't know, I'm telling them that I do not want to go on the scale because I don't want to know my numbers.
Mhm.
Um,
Do they respect that when you go? I mean, do they say, do you tell them, "Hey, I've had this problem in the past." Is it what do they say? I mean, do they ever give you any grief about not wanting to step on the scale?
so long as I explain, like, and I'm very open about it, they
Mhm.
respect that, and I say I'm in recovery from an eating disorder because I'm always going to be in recovery. It never
Okay.
ends. It's always a journey.
Yeah.
Um, and the problem is, sometimes they would take your weight, and even if you ask for it, it would show up somewhere in paperwork, and that can be very triggering for me.
Mhm.
So yeah, so for the most
Yeah.
part, they respect that unless there is a really, really urgent need to know my weight. I don't go.
Mhm.
I don't go on the scale.
So, yeah, I don't blame you because I have my girlfriend has a little glass scale, and
Hmm.
I understand where you're coming from because as someone who's diabetic, I'm trying to lose weight.
Hmm.
I'm 280 something now. My goal is to get down to 275. And then, that's just a small attainable goal. But because I'm weightlifting and all the other stuff, I'm also gaining muscle, so the weight doesn't change. So when it doesn't change or it goes up because I've gained muscle, I get mad,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Because it just feels like I'm spinning my tires.
yeah,
Even though I'm intermittent fasting, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm taking supplements. To me, it's not about so much the number as it is the sense of accomplishment, like you were talking about.
yeah,
Like when I see the numbers go down to where closer to where I want them, it's like you said, it's euphoric, and you're like, I'm attaining the goal, and so I can completely sympathize with what you went through with that. I told her, I said, you got to get rid of the scale, or at least hide it. If you want to use it, fine. You don't have to throw it away, but just put it to where I can't see it because I'm going to step on it every day, and then I'm going to just start my day pissed off. You know,
yeah.
and that kind of thing. So I know I completely get where you're coming from. Just to check on it, I check it once a month, and then I'm like, you're not going to be pissed off about this. It's just, it's just a number. It's all on how you feel,
Sure, exactly.
and it's like I feel great, for almost a geriatric.
It's exactly what it's about. It's about how you feel, and it's about freedom.
Hmm.
The whole journey is about freedom, really. Freedom, food freedom, body freedom, internal freedom, and that gets you again to self love. It always ends for me in self love.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
yeah, when it's all about living free and finding joy.
Hmm.
Um, when you follow, and it goes back to the beginning of our conversation, about
Hmm.
creativity. When you It's all about following your internal true joy, which is when you follow your internal joy. Joy is independent
Hmm.
of anything external, as opposed to happiness.
Right.
Joy comes from
Hmm.
within. So you can experience joy throughout adversities. You can experience joy through the most, the hardest of situations. If you set your mind, if you, it doesn't come like this. We need to learn how to do it. We need to explore ways.
Hmm.
But your internal joy, that's your compass. That's your love. That's like the divine leading you. That's what you're supposed to do here. So whatever feels like true joy, that's your way here. That's freedom. So for you, is doing
Hmm.
this podcast, that kind of brings you joy when you get up in the morning. That's your creativity. That's
Hmm.
your flashlight. That's your freedom. That's your internal joy. So,
Yeah.
and you can never, what I teach my kids is you can never, when you follow your true joy does never leads you down paths of violence. Never, because violence
Right.
doesn't give you any sense of, if we're talking about happiness or joy. True joy can only
Yeah.
come from acts of love, from things that are, um, that promote love, self-love, and others. You cannot
Hmm.
derive joy from anything
Hmm.
adversarial. Um,
Right. Well.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also like the idea of helping someone or doing an act of kindness. I think that's that well of joy you're talking
yeah,
about. Those things can be weaponized as well internally.
mhm,
Like if you if you're only doing it to feel good, then it's not good. But if you're doing it to feel good and to do good that makes it good. Does that mean
But you know
is it
what?
does that
I
make any
think that's
sense?
what people
Yeah.
confuse. When you do good,
Mhm.
for yourself, for
Mhm.
others, you're always going to derive a sense of, you know, we are, we're designed this way. Our biology is designed
Mhm.
to reward us for
Yeah.
acts of kindness, compassion, empathy. When you know, they call it the feel good hormones or feel good, the
Mhm.
neurotransmitters. When we act with
Yeah.
kindness, you cannot help but to feel good. It makes you feel good. You're supposed to
Mhm.
feel good. And that's the whole, you know, our design.
Mhm.
Acting with
Yeah.
violence only releases the, you know, survival hormones, and those are not hormones that make
Mhm.
us feel good. They make us feel um,
Right.
on edge. So the designer of this universe designed our bodies to, you know, he kind of like gave us the flashlight. Doing good will make you feel good. So, and you're supposed
Mhm.
to. So whether it's to yourself or to others, that's why being kind, just, you know, if it's smiling at somebody or, you know,
Mhm.
contributing something to the world, it goes both way. You help other people, but it also makes you feel good about
Yeah.
it. You're supposed to feel good about it.
Absolutely. And then you get the people that wanna take that kindness and they wanna weaponize it against the person that offered the kindness. You know, like, um, when you know, like, I had somebody that needed a place to stay when I was single, and I let them move in, and they just took full advantage of it,
Uh,
you know?
yeah,
So, I mean, so I think it's as much as, like, you know, like, the other day, it was I had a nail in my tire, so I took it to the tire shop to get it patched, and there was a woman in front of me, and, you know, she's a single mother, obviously a little bit strapped for cash, and this
mhm,
is just one of the last things she needs.
sure.
And I had the thought, I was like, you know, should I just pay for her tire? Because I've been blessed,
Mm,
have a good job,
sure.
I have all these things, and so I was like, but then again, I didn't want to be weird, you know, because sometimes when people they offer
Yeah,
that help, well, what do you want in
sure,
return?
sure,
I don't want anything in return.
sure.
I just want to help you. So I was like, you know, so my own fear of coming across as creepy, weird, whatever you want to call it. So that thought of me being, you know, misunderstood, I didn't do it.
No,
And then and as I was driving back, and I'm like, should I? Shouldn't I? It's one of those things. So I mean,
no.
maybe the next time something like that gets presented to me, I'll just do it.
Yeah, and that's the
You know
whole
what I
thing.
mean? And then, yeah.
But you know,
Hmm.
you talked, you said in the beginning, you
Hmm.
said it other people kind of take advantage of that. But you know, acting with love doesn't mean that you're sacrificing
Hmm.
yourself. Doesn't mean that you're kind of like lying down as a doormat, letting everybody step on you. Self love is also setting
Hmm.
boundaries of what's healthy for you. Does it make
Hmm.
me, when I do this, when I accept it, when whatever it is that I do, does this action or inaction, does it really, you kind of look inside yourself, does it give you a sense of joy? And that's your flashlight.
Right.
Now, if, you know, taking somebody in, or I, you know, wasn't sure, and somebody's like taking advantage of you, if you look
Hmm.
inside and say, you know, this doesn't feel good, I feel like I'm being
Yeah.
used, then setting boundaries and limitations for that, that is self love. That is an act of self love, you know, and that's saying, hey, you know
Yeah.
what, I don't
Hmm.
want to do that anymore. That is love.
Hmm.
That is following joy. So you know, you always have to carry yourself by your internal guidance. What feels
Hmm.
good inside? Does it feel like, am I doing this because I have to? Am I doing this because somebody told me to do it? Because I am, you know, if not this and this and that, that is not love. That is, you know,
Yeah.
obligation, you know, fear of, you know, spiritual leaders or religious leaders. If you don't do that, you're going to go to a bad
Hmm.
place. That is not
Right.
following love. But we all have the internal compass. And that goes back to freedom. That goes back to food freedom,
Mm-hmm.
body freedom, to what feels really truthfully joy inside. That is your way. So that's what I learned.
Yeah.
Now I'm not, you know, I'm still struggling. I'm still, it's all a work in progress. You know, I'm never going to
No, of
get to the
course.
point where I'm like, ah, I'm sitting at the top of the mountain. I got it all. Um, there's always challenges. I also understood that in life, you know, life's never static. You don't ever get to the stasis. You know, people are kind of like, oh my gosh, I just want to get to the point where all the challenges, and I'm sitting on a, pot of gold,
Mm.
and everything is great.
Yeah, of course.
It's just not this way. It's life,
Yeah.
pain, and mental pain, physical pain is a part of it.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. Well, you can't have all good and no bad. Pain makes us grow, and pain makes us stronger. I mean, don't get me wrong. During the time it's happening, it still sucks.
sure, exactly.
But if you can persevere and never quit, no one's ever allowed to quit, if you know what I mean. And you have to have the willpower and say, listen, this is going to get better it may not look like it right now, but on the other side of it, there could be something better, and it's not like just sitting here and obviously in the moment it feels like
Absolutely.
it's right here, it's in your face.
Yeah.
And in the moment is when it really sucks. But as time, it's like the death of a loved one.
Yeah.
In the first few weeks, it's a movie screen, right? It's in your face. You can't get away from it. And as time progresses, that screen gets smaller
Hmm.
and smaller and smaller and smaller until it's a itty bitty little iPhone screen. And then, but in the moment when it happens, like, like when my stepdad died,
Mm.
he was much more of a father figure to me than my own father was.
Mm.
The day he died, I didn't know what I was going to do
Yeah.
because he guided me in so many ways that my dad never did.
Yeah.
Lawrence, my biological father, was lacking in a lot of ways as a father,
Sure.
because he wasn't an educated man. And not that that means you have to be educated to be a good father, but he took his insecurities out on me and then
Mm.
imprinted them on me.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
He didn't.
Fred never did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fred never did that because he got me when my dad died when I was 14. And so my mom took her time to grieve. She met him, fell in love, got married. And then he treated me, it was rough in the beginning because I was a stubborn, teenager
Sure.
going through all that hormonal shit. And he had never really had a kid
Mm.
around him that much.
Mm.
So it was a bit much. It was just butting heads
Yeah.
and, hashing it out. So, but I guess where I was going with that was, when he died, it was, and when my mom too, it was right here in front of us.
Yeah.
So, and the moment that, you just have to understand that there's always going to be something better on the end. It'll always go away. Not, and maybe go away is not the appropriate term. Maybe it's things will level out, and you'll get back to whatever normal looks like for you, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That sounds like a really, really tough journey. I think for me, I went through a lot in life. I went through many, many challenges, physical, mental. Grief for me is
yeah.
probably one of the hardest things to go through. So I can really feel for you, and I'm sorry you went through this.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's pain. It's not acceptance of the challenges.
Mhm.
Is not glorifying to glorify the pain and say, "Hey, bring it on." But it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I guess it's a part of life, and it sucks
Mhm.
when it does happen.
Yeah.
And to let yourself
Right.
feel it, and let yourself fall and be honest
Mhm.
about what's going on. It's also really important. At the time when I go through the challenges, when I was dying from anorexia, it was torment. And the Crohn's, I
Mhm.
didn't know, I didn't see a way out of it. And here I am,
Right.
3 years down the road, talking about it. Completely at a different place. I also know,
Mhm.
and I know to sort of let go of trying to
Mhm.
live in preventions to prevent the next hard thing. I'm just kind of like,
Right.
challenges are going to come because that's part of life.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
Buddhism really talks a lot about it. Um,
Mhm.
but I think the what you can alleviate is the suffering rather than the pain. Pain is you cannot prevent pain. It's going to be
Right.
grief. It's going to be, physical diseases. It's going to be whatever that is. Losing loved ones. We can't. go through life without that. Um,
Yeah.
but the suffering, that's what you can alleviate. Learn how
Mhm.
to accept and also accept that it hurts, and then find ways to find that joy, that internal joy
Right.
through all these challenges. And you
Mhm.
absolutely can. There was a moment. So I went to treatment. I was 10 months in treatment. I spent 5 months in Ohio. And then I transferred to St.
Mhm.
Louis to a different program for another 5 months,
Mhm.
to finish treatment. And I never really understood this concept. I'm a very curious, eclectic person. I like to learn about all sorts of things. And like you yourself, you
Right.
talk to people and like learn about things. I was curious about Buddhism.
Mhm.
I never really delved into it too much. Just from what I knew, it did make sense to me. It always seemed to me like they're saying that you need to accept that suffering is part of life. And I'm like, no, I'm not accepting this. No way. I didn't
Mhm.
understand that.
Right.
But there was a moment, and a friend of mine told me you can find the joy, you can find the things, in life. And I was going through a lot. Um, at the end of those 10 months, just before coming back home, I was presented with another challenge. My husband, at that point, he went through a lot of trauma of his own through the entire
Right.
process of 3 years. Um, these kind of things affect everybody. Um,
Yeah.
So he went through his thing and he decided that he doesn't want to be together anymore. He wanted to leave the
Oh,
marriage. 3 weeks after
good.
10 months in treatment, he kind of falls on me. And today we're stronger than anything today, um,
Mhm.
because we just had to go through this motion. So this new challenge fell
Mhm.
on me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to come back home, very scared after 10 months, and this new reality's falling on me. What am I going to do? What's going to happen to our family? I was very scared and very kind of in despair. And I was sitting outside in on the porch in the morning before going to the program. And I was just looking at it was just a very, very simple moment. The sun came through, kind of shafted through the branches of the tree above the porch that I was sitting on. And I was just looking at this beautiful play of shadow and light. And I felt
Mhm.
so much at peace, and I felt such sense of joy with this very simple moment, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Ah, that's what they're talking about." It's not
Right.
about having suffering. It's not about glorifying suffering.
Mhm.
It's not what they say at all. What they're talking about is even through these moments, these times of challenge, you can still find joy in life. And that clicked
Yeah.
to me in that moment because I felt so much joy in that simple moment. And I understood, I still had the challenge. I still had that challenge of going back home, of everything, but I could still feel joy. I could still, and you could find it,
Mhm.
you can find it anywhere. Um,
Yeah.
like my friends, my family, originally from Israel. And
Mm.
I I experienced war when I was there. When I was 12, I experienced war myself, and throughout the entire, the last 2 years, they have been experiencing war over there.
Mm.
And we had a conversation about how even through war, there is another
Mhm.
story of a Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl, who talked about
Mhm.
even in the most, again, in war, even in captivity, even the most atrocious of um, uh, conditions, nobody and nothing can ever take that inner freedom from you. You are
Right.
inside, you're a free person. And again, that goes
Mhm.
back to joy is internal, joy is part of your inside. Um,
Mhm.
And I can talk about these things, and a lot of people who might be listening to it saying, how the hell do I even find this? I mean, what are you talking about? I don't find joy, and it's totally understandable. It's not something you can. Oh yeah, I'm just in going through really messed up challenges, and I'm just like a
Mhm.
joyful person. This is something
Right.
you you have to start by paying attention and thinking about this and finding your way to it is everybody's journey, but you can.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Hmm. Well, and it's, not to sound all hallmark, but it's finding the joy in a hug, a sunset, a walk,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. The idea, this idea of like you were talking about pain, bring it on. I used to have that mentality, and I still kind of do
Mm.
because it's like I'm at the point in my life where you constantly wait for the other foot to fall,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's like what's going to happen next, and but I'm getting better with it and living with that. It's not even a fear; it's just like an uneasiness.
Yeah, it's probably something you've experienced, and you're kind of like,
Yeah, it probably is. It's probably like I could say exactly. It's fear of abandonment.
mhm.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm always waiting for the next person in my life to leave.
Mhm.
Like I alluded to earlier on, I don't have a lot of friends,
Sure.
and sometimes it's by design. But I'm really good at setting boundaries,
Mhm.
and people don't
Okay.
like
Yeah.
boundaries. Like you lie to me, we're done.
Sure.
If you can't give me the common decency to be honest with me, that means you have no respect for me.
Yeah.
And if we don't have respect, we have nothing.
I
As far as interpersonal relationships are concerned, the one thing that I'm not going to tolerate is someone intentionally being disrespectful. It's also this boundary thing, and people are like, well, I'm going to do what I want to do, and it's like, not in my house, you ain't.
Sure, sure.
you know. So, but what part of Israel were you born in?
I was born in near Haifa, which is north, kind of
Hmm,
center.
okay.
But I've been in the United
Hmm.
States for 27 years, so I'm more American than I
Hmm.
love both my countries
Right.
dearly. I'm
Of
very, very
course. Yeah.
grateful for this amazing opportunity
Mhm.
to be here.
Yeah.
This
Hmm.
amazing country. I really truly love um, both countries dearly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's been a journey on its its own. I have a lot of stories.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, Israel is once things calm down because I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus.
Sure.
So for me, it's I definitely at some point in my life want to see Jerusalem
Mm,
because it's a significant place
sure.
for me. I think that another source of joy is traveling. Right,
Oh, yeah.
like um. I love to see different cultures. I love to see the world. I want to put some miles on my soul. I want to see everything if I can. I
Yeah.
want to see the pyramids of Giza. I want to see Jerusalem. I want to see, Africa. There's just so much that I want to do. And I think, people they get to this point to where they feel that their circumstance dictates what they can do.
Mhm.
If you're stuck in the US, go see a different state because there's all kinds of beauty all over and just being able to find the peace that everybody is searching for because everything going on right now in the world is a fucking shit show.
No.
It's like they don't the war and everything, and it's just war is an absolute senseless thing. And
Absolutely.
and here's and this is the last thing I'll say about it. There's only two things that come from war: death and pain.
Exactly.
And it's like and especially, I mean, obviously if someone's trying to kill you, you try to kill them right
Yeah.
back, but this isn't for that. This is some other reason. But anyways, that being said, I have three questions that I ask people that come on my show. Well, three, I think they're poignant. They might be kind of dumb. I don't know. Anyways, so the first one is, what are two beliefs that make you who you are, or ever how many you want to say? It doesn't need to be two, but what are some beliefs that center you as you?
Um, I always talk about really at the end is love. I believe, you said believe in Jesus, and to
Mhm.
me, it's all the same force for everybody.
Mhm.
I have a monthly live talk that I do with a friend of mine who is Muslim, and we
Mhm.
talk about how we're all part of a one. We're all connected. We're all part of God. We're all,
Mhm.
whatever people want to call it. To
Mhm.
me, it's love, the force of love.
Yeah.
And so, people
Mhm.
believe in Jesus or in Muhammad or, in Allah and whatever name they have. To me is, and
Mhm.
that's why we talk about it. Me and my friend Aaliyah, is to really bring to the world a different angle wherever, the world is consumed
Yeah.
with war and adversity and
Mhm.
division. My belief is that we're all, part of a one. We're all connected. This is just an
Mhm.
external suit,
Yeah.
and we're all part of God, and we're all part of love, and we're all at the
Mhm.
core made of love. And many
Yeah.
many of us forget that, and that's why there is violence. So we're all here in a passage
Yeah.
to learn our way back, to remember who we really truly are.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. The second question I have is, you're about to move on to the next life. What do you want to be remembered for?
um, I, for one, I
Mhm.
want my kids to remember me as somebody who helped them find their joy.
Mhm.
Um, Not perfect, and help them lead, find their own guidance and in life and love. Um, so I'm really hoping to be able to. I mean, and I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Well,
We always have
yeah.
flashes, and um, but I want to leave my kids here with um a way for themselves to helm their own life with
Right.
joy. Um, that's one. And honestly, I mean, really, this is my whole, after this journey that I went through, I understood that the greatest gift that anybody can give themselves and the world is just to be love here and to be light and love.
Mhm.
And just we just talked about it just before I walked with demons. I know what demons are. I
Mhm.
walked the dark side of life, and I know that I walked this path so that I can find my way to love. And you said you're a person who believes in Jesus, and that's exactly Jesus's teachings.
Mhm.
um and so, yeah, this is really the only thing. I don't care about material stuff. I don't
Mhm.
care about money. I don't care about anything at all. The only thing that I derive enjoyment from is just knowing that I helped, that I did
Yeah.
my part here to help. uh and that's all. I just be an embodiment of love as much as I can, and light for myself and for others. That's the only
Yeah.
thing I wish to be.
There you go. And then the last question, it's pretty simple. What makes you happy?
Um, well, the first thing comes to mind is creation. That's
Mhm.
where just creativity. That's where I'm in my element. That's where I'm connected to God. um, and I mean, and then there is, of course, other things. Spending just quality time. Just I learn to appreciate a lot
Yeah.
these days,
Mhm.
and it's really where I can find joy. Um, so the connection between, we haven't talked about that, but
Mhm.
the way that I found that, um, the way that I found my way to all these things is through meditation.
Mhm.
When I started my healing journey with Crohn's, with my brain, when I take on a project, I do it 100%, and I like to
Yeah.
learn everything about it and educate myself from every direction. So when my goal was to heal myself from Crohn's, I was trying to find every tool in the toolbox to help myself, and meditation was one of them.
Mhm.
And when I started meditating, and it was very quick in the beginning. I couldn't sit more than, and by the way, meditation doesn't have to be sitting, can be
Mhm.
walking, can be anything that you're kind of focused in the present moment.
Mhm.
But anyways, it was only a few minutes, but the more I did it, and I've been meditating on a regular basis every day for 6 years now, um, I started feeling this internal like internal and external, like a connection to, that's when I started to feel like I am love inside. I started to
Mhm.
feel that I was love. And I started to feel that I'm connected to something bigger and greater than myself.
Right.
And that's the core of joy. When the more I worked on it, and it's been a work in progress,
Mhm.
because to learn how to do that, it doesn't take a day. But the
Right.
more I progressed, the more I meditated, the more I did it every day, every day, every day, and I was intentional about it, I found that the biggest joy, and again, it all comes back to God and love, is the connection to myself, because we all part of God. The connection for myself to the divine is what I derive the greatest joy out of.
Mhm.
That is, it, um, I'm very fascinated by stories of near death experience. I've been
Mhm.
listening to a lot of them because it actually inspired me in my journey.
Yeah.
Because people face the divine, and they talked about such immense love.
Mhm.
And, like they were clinically dead, but they were experiencing so much joy and love that you can't put into words.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is, and I'm sure this is so much bigger and greater than that, but it is exactly what I feel when I'm connecting to that source of love inside of myself, because we are connected.
So I want to take time out and say thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you if they want to talk to you or listen to your music?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Phil. It was really a pleasure. I have a website. My website is nefritelor.com. It's NEFRITEL-OR.com. My music is playing really on all the major streaming platforms, and Apple and Spotify, and many other platforms that I'm not even aware of. You can always Google my name. I have a blog on Medium that I write on, and Facebook. I use Facebook really as also another um, kind of a blog. Yeah, so you can really find me on all these different platforms.
You're a very special person to have gone through what you've been through and to have the kind of outlook on life that you have. It's inspiring, to be honest. So thanks again for come being on here and being brave enough to tell your story, and I'm sure it'll help somebody who's going through something similar.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. And 100%, this is why I share my story, in hopes that it's going to help somebody else. So hopefully it will reach at least one person. And thanks again for
Hmm.
having me.
Absolutely.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.